There comes a moment, a very clear moment, when a narcissist realizes they no longer have control over you. And that moment does not appear as anger. It does not arrive as loud rage. Instead, it shows up as silence, a strange pause, a quiet confusion. For the first time since they stepped into your life, the emotional supply they depended on is gone. The mirror they constantly looked into suddenly stops reflecting. The person they once drained for comfort, attention, and validation is now standing somewhere beyond their reach. What begins happening inside them after that is something very few people truly understand unless they have experienced it themselves. The same person who once made you feel invisible, unimportant, confused, and emotionally exhausted slowly starts circling around the memory of you in ways they cannot even explain. That silent pull becomes stronger over time. It is not about love. It is not about healthy attachment. It is a deep psychological connection to someone they can no longer influence. Some people describe this as becoming your slave until death, not in a literal or physical way, but in a psychological one. Their mind becomes trapped by the absence of the person they once believed would always be available. Before we go deeper into why this happens and what is really taking place inside a narcissistic mind, take one quick moment to subscribe to this channel. Here we explore psychology beyond the surface. These ideas can completely change how you understand difficult relationships and the emotional patterns that shape them. Every week brings new insights that help you see your experiences with greater clarity. So subscribe now, stay with me, and keep watching, because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you see your past. The next part reveals something most people never recognize until it is too late. It is important to understand one truth. A narcissist does not truly love you. They feed from you. Those two things may look similar at first, but they are completely different. Real love accepts another person. Emotional exploitation simply uses them. To them, you were never an equal partner. You became a valuable source of emotional fuel that helped keep their unstable inner world from falling apart. That is why they appeared so deeply interested in you in the beginning. It was not because they recognized your deepest self. It was because they noticed your kindness, your patience, your empathy, your willingness to explain, your habit of carrying emotional weight for others, your ability to remain calm while they created chaos, and your gift for turning conflict into peace. Every one of those qualities became something they believed they could keep taking forever, but no person can live that way without changing. Slowly, almost without noticing, something begins to shift inside you. It starts quietly. It feels like a tiredness that no amount of sleep can remove. It feels like loneliness even while they are sitting beside you. It feels like confusion that every conversation only makes worse instead of better. That exhaustion is not a sign that you are weak. It is your nervous system finally speaking honestly after being ignored for far too long. It is your body recognizing what your heart kept trying to deny. It is realizing this person has never been emotionally safe, and that no amount of love, patience, sacrifice, or understanding can repair a wound they refuse to face. Stay with me, because what comes next explains why everything changes once you stop giving them what they expect. The real turning point begins the moment you stop explaining yourself. The moment you stop searching for understanding from someone whose power depends on keeping you uncertain. The moment you no longer react to the traps they carefully create. The silent treatment no longer shakes you. Their sudden kindness no longer pulls you back. Their invented emergencies lose their effect. The comparisons, the emotional games involving other people, the rewritten stories, the constant denial of what really happened, and the manipulation that once made you question your own memory begin to lose all power. Little by little, you step outside the emotional system they built around your pain. And that is when something remarkable happens. You become impossible for them to predict. You stop responding in the ways they have studied for so long. Your silence carries confidence instead of fear. Your calm no longer invites control. To someone whose identity depends on controlling the emotional reactions of others, this becomes deeply unsettling. They cannot read your thoughts. They cannot calculate your next move. They cannot pull the emotional strings that once worked so easily. That uncertainty becomes its own prison because they are no longer controlling the story. They are chasing answers they cannot find. And once that happens, the balance of power changes forever. Keep watching, because the next insight uncovers what a narcissist secretly experiences when they realize you are truly gone, and why that realization can stay with them for years. They do not have a steady sense of who they are inside. Instead, they rely on a carefully created image, and that image only survives when someone is watching it. For a long time, you were the audience they depended on most. You celebrated them when they wanted admiration. You felt hurt when they wanted control. You apologized when they wanted to appear innocent. You stayed when they needed proof that they could never be abandoned. But the moment you stop playing that role, everything begins to fall apart. The performance loses its purpose. The stage suddenly feels empty. They are left standing alone with no applause, no emotional reaction, no reflection to reassure them. All that remains is the uncomfortable silence of their own emptiness. This is where the psychological attachment truly begins. Listen carefully, because this point matters. This is not about ownership. It is not about becoming someone's property. It is entirely emotional and psychological. What really happens is much deeper. The narcissist becomes fixated on the version of you they can no longer influence. Your calm unsettles them. Your distance confuses them. Your refusal to argue frustrates them. Even the peaceful tone in your voice feels unfamiliar because it no longer carries fear or desperation. They begin watching from afar. They quietly ask mutual friends about your life. They unexpectedly appear in places they think you might visit. They send messages that seem casual but are carefully designed to discover whether you are still emotionally available. When you stay silent, the fixation often grows even stronger. Nothing unsettles them more than someone who once depended on their approval but has now discovered genuine self-respect. Suddenly, you become the unanswered question they cannot solve. You are the person they failed to completely control. You are the mirror that walked away without breaking. Stay with me, because the next part explains why this memory follows them much longer than most people realize. On the surface, they may move on very quickly. Sometimes it happens so fast that it leaves everyone shocked. They find new people. They create new stories. They build another performance for a different audience. But beneath all of that, something remains unresolved. Deep inside, there is a quiet awareness that someone finally saw through the image they worked so hard to protect and still decided to leave. That realization does not disappear easily. No new relationship, no fresh attention, and no amount of admiration can completely erase it. It becomes a hidden reminder they continue carrying long after your absence becomes permanent. This is why understanding the process is so important. Without understanding it, you may feel tempted to interrupt your own healing. You may think about checking on them one last time. You may feel the urge to explain yourself again, offer another chance, or answer one more message, hoping this time they will finally understand. But every time that cycle starts again, the emotional pattern is reset. That is why protecting your peace matters so much. A narcissist depends on emotional reactions. Your pain reassures them they still matter. Your anger tells them they still have influence. Your tears convince them they still occupy space in your life. Even strong resentment can become emotional fuel because it keeps your attention focused on them. The only response that truly removes that power is genuine indifference, not fake indifference, not silence used as revenge, not dramatic posts meant to send hidden messages. Real indifference is quiet. It is peaceful. It grows naturally when you fully understand that this person is not a puzzle waiting to be solved, but a repeating pattern that no longer deserves your energy. Keep watching, because the final insight reveals why reaching this level of peace changes your future in ways you may not expect. Once you reach that deep inner calm, something remarkable happens. You stop becoming someone they believe they can pull back into the cycle. Instead, you become a reminder of the one situation they could never fully control. That memory stays with them far longer than they admit. It quietly follows them into future relationships, future disagreements, future lonely evenings, and moments when they cannot understand why something still feels missing. The unresolved experience continues to surface because your decision to walk away challenged the image they depended on for years. That is why protecting your peace is not about punishing another person. It is about refusing to surrender your emotional freedom again. If these words are giving a name to feelings you have carried for a long time, stay here with me. Subscribe to this channel because healing from emotional manipulation is not something that happens overnight. It is a gradual rebuilding of your confidence, your boundaries, your trust in yourself, and your ability to recognize healthy relationships. Every insight brings another piece of clarity. Every lesson helps you reconnect with the version of yourself that existed before confusion became normal. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let this become a place where your growth is supported, your understanding grows stronger, and your peace is treated with the value it truly deserves. The next video may answer the question you have been carrying for far longer than you realize. Now, let us go even deeper, because this is the part that many people never fully understand. The real reason you were chosen is probably not what you have believed all along. You were never chosen because you were weak. In fact, you were chosen because you carried a very special kind of strength. You were deeply loyal, you believed in forgiveness, you naturally looked beyond someone's behavior and searched for the pain hidden underneath it. You were the kind of person who could stand beside someone during their darkest moments and still believe they could become better. In a healthy relationship, those qualities would have been valued, protected, and appreciated. In this relationship, they became tools that were used against you. Now that you are finally walking away, one of the hardest things you must do is stop blaming yourself for the very qualities that make you kind and compassionate. Your empathy was never the problem. The problem was giving it to someone who repeatedly used it without respect. Your ability to love was never your weakness. The real problem was pouring endless love into a place that could never hold it. The goal now is not to become cold or emotionally closed. It is not about building walls so high that nobody can ever reach you again. The real work is learning wisdom. Keep your gentle heart, but protect your boundaries. Keep your kindness, but allow people to earn your trust. Keep your ability to love deeply, but remember that true emotional closeness is a privilege, not something everyone automatically deserves. That privilege is earned through honesty, consistency, accountability, respect, and emotional safety, not through charm, emotional intensity, empty promises, or painful cycles that create unhealthy attachment. Stay with me, because the next truth explains why your peace becomes the very thing they struggle to understand. Here is something very few people are ever told. The longer you remain grounded in your own peace, the more difficult life often becomes for the narcissist. Not because you are trying to hurt them, not because you are seeking revenge, simply because you have stopped carrying responsibilities that never belonged to you in the first place. You are no longer managing their emotions. You are no longer holding together the identity they constantly needed other people to support. You are no longer accepting blame for problems you did not create. You are no longer transforming hurtful behavior into excuses they never earned. Without your constant emotional effort, they are left facing themselves. And for someone who has spent years avoiding that reflection, it becomes deeply uncomfortable. That is why they may suddenly return months or even years later. They may arrive with carefully prepared apologies. They may speak with new understanding. That sounds convincing at first. They may promise lasting change with words that feel sincere. But your healing is not measured by whether those words stir emotions inside you. Healing is measured by something much quieter. Can you feel those emotions without abandoning yourself again? Can you remember everything that happened without reopening the same painful door? Can you wish another person peace while still protecting your own? That calm, steady decision is where real freedom begins. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is simply a quiet confidence that refuses to sacrifice itself anymore. Keep watching, because the final insight reveals the hidden loneliness that often exists beneath the image they work so hard to protect. To fully understand what you are leaving behind, you also need to understand something about the loneliness that often exists inside a narcissistic personality. Beneath the confidence, beneath the criticism, beneath the cold expressions and sharp words is someone who struggles to experience genuine emotional closeness. Not only with other people, but often with themselves as well. Real intimacy requires honesty. It requires allowing another person to see you without pretending, without hiding behind an image, and without controlling how you are perceived. That level of openness feels unbearable to them, so they avoid it again and again. Whenever true closeness begins to grow, they often damage it before it becomes real. As a result, the pattern repeats itself throughout their life. Different people enter the picture, but the emotional cycle remains almost unchanged. New faces appear, yet the same emptiness quietly follows. The setting changes, but the emotional script rarely does. Meanwhile, your path can become completely different. Every healthy boundary you build, every lesson you learn, and every act of self-respect moves you further away from that exhausting cycle and closer to relationships built on trust, honesty, and peace. That is the future waiting for you when you choose yourself. And once you truly understand that, there is very little that can convince you to return to what you have already outgrown. Somewhere deep inside, in a place they rarely allow themselves to face, they already know the truth. They know something was lost that cannot easily be replaced. That quiet awareness becomes a burden they continue carrying, even when they pretend nothing ever happened. Your absence slowly becomes the loudest reminder of everything they tried to avoid. Not because you were perfect, but because you came closer than most people ever did to seeing beyond the image they carefully built. You saw the cracks beneath the performance. Your care was genuine enough to reveal how much of their world depended on pretending. That is why, on a deep psychological level, they often struggle to completely let go of the memory of you. It is not the kind of love most people dream about. It is something far more complicated. You become a symbol of the life they might have experienced if they had been willing to face themselves honestly. Before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe if you have not already. This channel exists for people who are rebuilding themselves after emotionally difficult relationships. Every lesson is designed to help you see more clearly, think more confidently, and move forward with greater peace. Share this with someone who may need these words today, and stay with me because the most important shift is still ahead. What comes next has the power to change the way you see your entire journey. The greatest transformation begins when you stop needing them to understand your pain. You stop waiting for the apology that may never come. You stop hoping they will finally admit what happened or fully recognize the damage they caused. That does not happen because your story suddenly becomes less important. It happens because you finally realize something life-changing. Their understanding was never the key to your freedom. Your own understanding always was. The day you no longer depend on someone else to confirm what you already know is the day their influence over your life truly begins to disappear. From that point forward, every attempt to pull you back into old emotional patterns loses its strength. The familiar words no longer affect you the same way. The emotional performances no longer feel convincing. The confusion that once trapped you slowly fades because you are no longer standing in the same emotional place. You have rebuilt yourself from within. Your nervous system has learned that peace is not emptiness. Calm is not boredom. Stability is not the absence of love. It is the presence of emotional safety. That version of you, the one quietly growing stronger every day, becomes impossible for them to fully understand because you have done what they could never force themselves to do. You chose yourself completely, not through anger, not through revenge, simply through consistent self-respect. stay with me, because the final truth may be the one that stays with you long after this video ends. That single choice, repeated day after day in countless quiet moments, changes everything. Every boundary you protect, every moment you refuse to abandon yourself, every peaceful decision you make becomes another step toward a life they can no longer control. While you continue moving forward, they may occasionally remember you in moments they never expected, during an ordinary evening, in a room that suddenly feels too quiet, in silence that no distraction seems able to fill. They may wonder why certain memories return without warning, why familiar places feel different, why something inside still feels unsettled despite everything they have tried to replace. They may never fully understand what they are experiencing because facing those emotions would require confronting parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding. Meanwhile, your life continues moving in a completely different direction. You breathe with greater ease. You love with healthier boundaries. You no longer wait for permission to be yourself. You no longer explain your worth to someone unwilling to recognize it. You stop translating your heart into words for people who never intended to listen. And with every step forward, your confidence grows stronger while the past loses more of its hold. Eventually, you recognize a truth that changes everything. You were never the one who needed their approval to survive. You simply needed your own permission to walk away. Deep inside you, a door begins opening that may have remained closed long before they ever entered your life. Beyond that door is a stronger, wiser version of yourself who has been patiently waiting for you to stop sacrificing your peace for people who could never protect it. As you move toward that future, you finally understand that every challenge you survived has been shaping you for this moment, the moment you choose freedom, healing, and yourself, completely, quietly, and without looking back.